Probably looking at this whole self-improvement thing wrong. And the worst part is, you don't even know it. Because the way you're doing it feels like progress. It feels like you're working on yourself. It feels like you're moving forward. You're reading the books. You're listening to the talks. You're taking the courses. You're attending the seminars. You're filling notebooks with ideas. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you believe that all of this is going to add up to a different version of you eventually. It isn't. Here's the truth. The vast majority of people who consider themselves into self-improvement are actually further from changing than the average person who never reads a book about it. Because they have built a sophisticated illusion of growth fed by all the reading and watching that protects them from doing the actual work of growing. They feel like they're improving. They are not. They are studying. And after 20 years of studying, they are essentially the same person they were when they started. Except now, they have very strong opinions about what other people should do to improve themselves. Today, I want to walk you through 5 reasons why most self-improvement doesn't work, and what actually does. Because the gap between those two things is enormous, and most people will spend their entire adult life in the wrong column without ever realizing it. Reading the books, watching the talks, going to the events, year after year, decade after decade, and changing almost nothing about the actual shape of their life. The fix isn't to stop trying to improve. The fix is to stop mistaking the appearance of improvement for the real thing and start doing the boring, slow, repetitive work that actually changes who you are. By the end of this talk, you'll know the difference. You must take what I'm about to tell you seriously, because the gap between knowing this and not knowing this will define the next decade of your life. And what you do with that knowledge is up to you. Now, before we get into it, you have to understand what is at stake here. Because most people, when they pick up another self-improvement book, think they are at worst making no progress. They figure, at least I'm not getting worse. At least I'm trying. But that isn't actually what's happening. Reading about the work without doing the work is actively worse than reading nothing at all. Because it gives you the feeling of progress without the substance. And the feeling without the substance is a trap. You see, your brain releases the same chemicals when you read about doing something useful as when you actually do something useful. The book about exercise gives you a small hit of accomplishment. The talk about discipline gives you a small hit of accomplishment. The seminar about wealth gives you a small hit of accomplishment. And after enough of these hits, your brain has been rewarded for the reading so many times that it doesn't need the actual behavior anymore. The reading has replaced the doing, and you don't notice because you feel like you're doing something. Here's the truth. The person who reads 0 self-improvement books but does one new thing in their life every quarter is going to outperform the person who reads 50 self-improvement books but does nothing. Every single time. Because the first person is building. The second person is just feeding the feeling of building. And after 10 years, the first person has done 40 new things and incorporated some of them into a different life. The second person has read 500 books and is in roughly the same position they were a decade ago, but with a much better developed opinion about what they should be doing. You must understand this clearly. The risk of all this reading and watching isn't that it doesn't work. The risk is that it makes you feel like you are working, while the actual conditions of your life stay exactly the same. It is an anesthetic dressed up as a stimulant. It dulls the very pain that should be motivating you to take real action. I am telling you, the people who eventually break out of this trap are the ones who let themselves feel that pain instead of medicating it with another book. The pain is the fuel. The book is the painkiller. And the painkiller has been keeping you in place. The people stuck in this trap are everywhere. They are some of the most well-read, articulate, intelligent people you know. And they aren't living lives that reflect any of what they have absorbed because they read it. They never did it. And reading is not doing. That distinction today is everything. You must hold on to it through everything else I'm going to tell you. The whole rest of this talk is going to be about how to stop being a reader and start being a doer. And the difference between those two roles is the difference between staying who you are and becoming somebody new. The first thing you have to see clearly is that reading about self-improvement is not self-improvement. Watching a talk about discipline is not discipline. Listening to somebody describe the work is not the work. They feel similar. They activate similar parts of the brain, but they produce completely different results. You see, taking in all this material gives you the experience of growth without any of the actual change. Your knowledge expands. Your vocabulary expands. Your understanding of the concepts expands. And because all of that feels like growth, because expansion of any kind feels like progress, you mistake the expansion of your understanding for the expansion of your capability. But understanding something and being able to do it aren't the same thing. Most people who can explain in detail the principles of building a great body can't build one. Most people who can articulate beautifully the philosophy of discipline aren't disciplined. Most people who have read every book about money are still struggling with money. Here's the truth. The knowing is the easy part. The knowing has always been the easy part. The doing is the part that requires the actual work. And the work is fundamentally different from any amount of reading, listening, or watching. The person who reads about exercise for an hour gains nothing physical. The person who exercises for an hour gains a physical change. Same hour. Completely different result. And the trap is that the first hour feels productive, feels like you're working on yourself, when in fact, your body is exactly where it was when you started. I am telling you, this is the trap that catches the most ambitious people. Because ambitious people love learning. They love the feeling of having figured something out. They love adding new frameworks to their mental toolkit. So they keep reading more and more, telling themselves that they're preparing to do the work, that they're getting their ducks in a row, that the right framework is just around the corner. And then a decade passes, and they have 30 frameworks, and they have done almost nothing with any of them, because the framework was never the work. The framework was the preparation for the work. And preparation, beyond a certain point, is just procrastination, wearing a respectable name. You have to catch yourself doing this. The next time you finish a book about a thing you want to change, ask yourself, what am I actually going to do about this today, in the next hour, in my current life? If the answer is, I'll think about it, or I'll buy another book, or I'll start next week, you have studied instead of done. You must stop studying, start doing. Even badly, even with the wrong framework, even before you feel ready. Because the doing is the only thing that ever changes anything. Everything else is just preparation. And preparation without execution is just an expensive form of being stuck. The second thing you have to understand is that most self-improvement runs on motivation. And motivation is rented, not owned. You can borrow it from a book, a seminar, a talk, a recording, but you cannot keep it. It leaves. Every single time, it always leaves. You see, the way most self-improvement is delivered is designed to produce an emotional high. The speaker gets you fired up. The author paints the picture of who you could be. The seminar ends with everybody standing, applauding, full of conviction that things are going to be different now. And on the drive home, you feel different, lighter, bigger, more capable. And for 3 days, maybe a week, you ride that wave. You wake up earlier. You eat better. You write the list. You make the calls. The motivation is doing the work. And the motivation feels endless. You think, finally, I figured this out. Then on day 8 or day 10, the motivation runs out. Because it was rented from someone else, and the rental period has ended. The book you read isn't fresh in your mind anymore. The speaker isn't yelling at you anymore. The emotional high has been replaced by the same old grind that was there before. And you stop. And then you tell yourself you need to find new motivation. You buy another book. You attend another seminar. You watch another talk. And the cycle starts over. 3 days of motivation, followed by collapse, then another rental. Here's the truth. The people who actually change their lives don't run on motivation. They run on structure. They built a structure once, slowly and carefully, that produces the behavior whether they feel motivated or not. The structure is owned. The structure doesn't expire. The structure doesn't need to be refreshed by another book. And the structure is boring to talk about. It doesn't make a great seminar. Nobody buys a book about pick one small thing, do it every day for 2 years, don't stop. That book would be 30 pages and wouldn't sell. So the industry doesn't sell it. It sells the motivational story. The motivational story rents you motivation for a week. But here's what most people never figure out. The cure isn't more motivational material. The cure is to stop chasing motivation entirely. To accept that motivation is unreliable, temporary, and not necessary for change. To build a small structure that produces the behavior on the days you feel nothing. You must let go of the idea that you need to feel inspired to take action. The disciplined people don't feel inspired most of the time. They just do the thing because the structure does the thing. And the doing, accumulated over years, becomes the life. Motivation never built anything. Structure builds everything. And the structure is yours the moment you stop renting your effort from somebody else's voice. The third thing you have to look at clearly is what the self-improvement industry is actually selling you. Because if the products work the way they're advertised, if reading the book actually produced the change, the industry would collapse. There would be no need for the next book, the next seminar, the next course. The economic model of self-improvement requires that you stay improving forever. which is another way of saying it requires that you never actually arrive. Because if you arrived, you would stop buying. And the people selling you the books and seminars can't afford for you to stop buying. So the products are designed in a particular way. They give you enough to feel like you're moving. They give you enough to make you want the next thing. But they almost never give you what would actually finish the work, because finishing isn't profitable. You see, the secret of every functional self-improvement principle is that it is simple, almost embarrassingly simple. Pick one small thing. Do it every day. Don't stop. That is the entire technology. The whole industry is built on dressing that one principle up in 5,000 different costumes, so they can sell it back to you 5,000 different times. And you, the reader, never get to the simple version. You stay in the costume layer. You think the next book might have the answer. You think the next teacher might have the framework. You think the next course might unlock the door. So you keep buying. Here's the truth. There is no door to unlock. There is no framework to discover. There is no book that will hand you what you have been searching for. Because what you've been searching for cannot be handed to you. It has to be built slowly by you, doing one small thing every day for a long time. And nobody can sell you that. They can only point at it. The pointing has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. The doing is still free. You have to see this clearly. The people who get rich from self-improvement are mostly not the people who follow self-improvement advice. They are the people who sell self-improvement to other people. And the customer base depends on staying in the reader role. Once a customer becomes a person who has actually changed, they leave the market. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just economics. But you have to understand the economics so you stop being a perpetual customer. The moment you accept that there is no next book, no next seminar, no next course that's going to give you what you need, that moment, you stop buying. And the energy you use to spend buying, you can now spend doing. The doing is what produces the change. The doing was always going to be the thing. Stop funding the appearance of change. Start producing actual change. The math, once you see it, is impossible to unsee. The fourth thing you have to understand is that change is behavioral, not cognitive. You cannot think your way into a different life. You cannot believe your way into it. You cannot reframe your way into it. You can only do your way into it. And most self-improvement is aimed at the wrong level. Most self-improvement is cognitive. It teaches you to reframe your thoughts, to change your beliefs, to visualize your success, to affirm your worth. All of which sounds like work and feels like work, but produces almost no change in the actual conditions of your life. Because none of it is at the level where the conditions live. The conditions of your life live at the level of what you do every single day with your time and your body. Not at the level of what you think about while you're sitting still. The thinking by itself doesn't move the conditions. The behavior moves the conditions. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He had been doing self-improvement for 15 years by the time he came to me. 15 years. He had read more than 200 books. He had attended more than 30 seminars. He had taken more than 50 courses in every format you could imagine. He could recite the major frameworks from memory. He could tell you the difference between the schools of thought. And his life looked essentially the same as it had looked when he had started. Same body, same income, same relationships, same sense of dissatisfaction. He came to me exhausted, frustrated. He said, I don't understand. I've done everything they said to do. I have read everything they said to read. Why am I still here? And I asked him one question. I said, in the last 15 years, name one specific habit you have maintained without interruption for more than 90 days. He thought about it for a long time. He couldn't name one, not one. Despite all the reading, all the seminars, all the courses, he had never actually maintained a single behavior change for 90 consecutive days. I told him, that is your problem. You have been studying change, not making it. And you must understand the distinction before anything else can shift for you. The books did not lie to you. The seminars did not lie to you. But the books and seminars aren't change. The doing is change. And you have done nothing consistently for any length of time. That is why you are still here. He sat with that for a long time. Then he asked what to do. I told him, pick one thing, just one. Do it every morning for the next 90 days. And in those 90 days, you are forbidden from reading another self-improvement book. You are forbidden from attending another seminar. You are forbidden from taking another course. The reading stops. The doing starts. He picked one thing. He started writing for 30 minutes every morning. Just 30 minutes, without exception. No more books for him, no more seminars, just the writing. A year later, he came back. He was a different man. He had written a draft of a book. He had lost 20 pounds because the discipline of one habit had spread to others without him forcing it. He had gotten promoted at work because the consistency had changed how he showed up everywhere else. He told me the 200 books had done nothing. The single sustained behavior had done everything. The change had been waiting for him on the other side of doing, not on the other side of more reading. And he had spent 15 years reading because reading felt like doing. The day he accepted that doing was the only thing that did anything, that day, his real life started. 15 years he had wasted, not because the books were bad, but because he had treated the books as the work. The books were never the work. The work was always the work. And the work could only be done by doing every single day in his actual life, not by reading about somebody else's. The fifth thing you have to accept is that what actually works is boring and slow and repetitive, and nobody is going to make it sound thrilling. Nobody is going to write a bestseller about it because there's almost nothing to say about it. You see, the real engine of change is one small habit done every single day for years. That's it. That's the entire technology. There are no advanced techniques. There are no secret unlocks. There is no shortcut. There never was. There never will be. The shortcut is a lie that gets sold to people who haven't accepted the long way yet. There is only the daily repetition, sustained for long enough that it changes who you are at the level of identity. And most people, when they hear this, are disappointed. They wanted something more. They wanted the framework that would change everything. They wanted the principle they hadn't heard before. They wanted the hack. And here you are telling them, pick one small thing. Do it every day. Do not stop. The smallness offends them. The slowness offends them. But here's the truth. The smallness and the slowness are the design, not the bug. The reason most people don't change is that they can't accept that change comes through small, slow, repetitive action. They keep looking for something bigger, faster, more impressive. And while they're looking, the small repetitive action is what would have changed them if they had been doing it the whole time. The person who walks 30 minutes every morning for 20 years has built a different body than the person who reads about exercise for 20 years. The person who writes 200 words every morning for 20 years has built a different mind than the person who reads about writing for 20 years. The person who saves 10% of every paycheck for 20 years has built a different bank account than the person who reads about money for 20 years. The math doesn't care how exciting your method was. The math only cares whether the action got repeated. The boring, slow, repetitive action is what produces the math, and the math is what produces the life. You must make peace with the slowness. You must accept that you won't see meaningful results in 30 days, or 60, or 90. The meaningful results show up at year 2, year 5, year 10. And by then, you won't even remember what it felt like to be the person who couldn't sustain a habit for 90 days. I'm telling you, this is the entire secret. The boring, slow, repetitive action, sustained over years, is the only thing that has ever produced lasting change in any human being. Everything else is decoration. Everything else is performance. The thing that works was always in front of you. It just didn't look impressive enough to take seriously. So here's what I want you to do. If you have been stuck in the reading trap for years, the fix isn't complicated. The fix is to invert your approach to self-improvement entirely. First, stop buying. No new books for the next 6 months. No new seminars, no new courses, no new recordings about how to change your life. Whatever you have already absorbed in your decades of studying is enough. You don't need more input. You need to apply what you already have. The next book you read on self-improvement is going to make you feel like you're moving while keeping you exactly where you are. Don't reach for it. Trust me on this. The library you've already built in your head is more than enough to carry you for the next 10 years of doing. Second, pick one thing, just one. The thing you have known for years that you should be doing, that you haven't been doing. Maybe it is exercise. Maybe it is writing. Maybe it is reading something other than self-improvement. Maybe it is saving money before spending it. Maybe it is calling your mother. Whatever it is, pick it. Make it small, embarrassingly small. 5 minutes, 200 words, $10. The smallness is the point. You want something you can do every single day without negotiation. Third, do it for 2 years, not 90 days. 2 years without stopping, without missing more than 2 days in a row at any point, without trying to make it bigger. Just the small thing, every day for 2 years. You see, the doing of this is going to produce a transformation in you that no book ever could. Not because the small thing is magical. It isn't. But because the act of sustaining one behavior for 2 years rewires you at a level that no amount of reading will ever reach. You become somebody who does what they said they would do. And that single quality, the doing of what you said, is the foundation of every other change. That's the whole plan. Stop buying. Pick one thing. Do it for 2 years. You must commit to all 3, not just one of them. There is no 4th step. There is no 5th step. There is no framework that goes deeper than this. Anybody who tells you there is selling you something that will keep you exactly where you are while making you feel like you're moving. Drop the studying. Pick up the doing. Watch what happens over the next 2 years. The change you've been waiting for has not been hiding in the next book or the next program. It has been waiting on the other side of doing something, anything, consistently. You have to choose it. Nobody will choose it for you. And the longer you stay in the reader role, the longer the version of you who would have built something stays trapped inside the version of you who is still reading about building. The change you've been chasing for a decade has been waiting on the other side of this one inversion the entire time. So here's what I want you to carry with you. Most self-improvement doesn't work because it isn't designed to work. It is designed to feel like it works while keeping you in the role of reader. The way out isn't more reading. The way out is to stop reading and start doing. There is a version of you who's still going to be reading self-improvement books 10 years from now, still attending the seminars, still watching the talks, still feeling like you're working on yourself, and still living essentially the same life you live today. That version is going to be exhausted by the gap between how much they have absorbed and how little has changed. There's another version of you who, starting tomorrow, picks one small thing and does it every single day for 2 years. That version isn't going to read another self-improvement book during those 2 years. That version is going to look very different by month 24 than they look right now. You must decide which version you want to be. The decision isn't between improving and not improving. It is between studying improvement and producing it, between the appearance of growth and the reality of growth, between feeling like you're moving and actually moving. Here's the truth. The people who have built lives you envy are not the people who read the most self-improvement books. They are the people who read almost none and just did every single day the small thing they had decided to do. Their library is small. Their bookshelf is small. Their record of seminar attendance is small. Their record of sustained doing is enormous. That can be you. The path is available. You must take it deliberately today with one small commitment that you intend to keep for the next 2 years. It doesn't require buying anything. It doesn't require attending anything. It doesn't require figuring anything out. It requires picking one thing today and doing it tomorrow and the day after and the day after that for the next 2 years. That is the whole technology. That has always been the whole technology. Everybody who has ever changed has used that technology. There are no exceptions. There is no person in history who built something meaningful in their life by reading about it. Every single one of them, without exception, did the small thing every single day for a long time. And the small thing accumulated is what built whatever they built. And the day you stop hoping for a better one is the day you finally start using it. The doing is what works. Everything else is the long, expensive, well-articulated story of not doing. Choose to be the one who does today, starting with the smallest possible thing, and keep going until 2 years have passed.
What if I told you the most successful cyclist of the 21st century rides at almost exactly the same cadence in every race he's ever won? And I mean every race. The Tour, the Giro, World Championship.
I've been shown an incredibly powerful training session that is actually both more effective and easier. And yes, this is legit. There are a million different ways of getting fit, and each one seemingly promises that it will unlock new levels of performance. But the older I get, the more I realise that whilst there is good training and bad training, there are no shortcuts. Sad face. Except, perhaps, this one. Is it, though, quite as magic as it seems? In this video, I will explain it all, speak to the scientists who created it, and demonstrate what it's like in comparison to others. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure we're on the same page here. What I'm going to be telling you about is an interval session. Interval training being a great way of getting more out of your riding time if you've got a specific goal or objective. And to be fair, that goal might well just be improving your general health and fitness. It's all about alternating periods or intervals of hard riding followed by easier recovery intervals in between. Now, there is an almost infinite number of variations of interval sessions that you can do, varying both intensity and duration. Typically, the harder the interval, the shorter it will need to be, and the less recovery you have between it, the harder the session will feel. Now, essentially, you choose what you want to do based on the outcomes that you want. Now, one of the reasons why interval sessions are so effective, other than making you ride harder than you otherwise would do if you just went out for a bike ride, is that they allow you to do more work than if you just did one long continuous effort. Now, when it comes to high-intensity training, there is a direct correlation between the amount of time you spend above 90% of your VO2 max and the training response you get. The more time above 90%, the fitter you become. This is pretty well established, and I checked with Professor Bent Ronestad, who is a world-leading sports scientist, and he showed me a whole raft of research to back this up. And we will speak to him later. The tough bit here is that 90% of VO2 max is really flipping hard. But this is where our magic training session comes in. So what is it? Well, you have been waiting patiently. Here is what you need to know. There is a trick, a shortcut, if you will, that allows you to spend the maximum amount of time possible at over 90% of VO2 max. The answer is 30-15s, the magic bullet, the golden goose, micro intervals. Even sounds easy, doesn't it? Now, I know what some of you are going to be saying. What the flip is a 30-15? And it is a great question. We'll come on to it in just a moment. Others of you, though, are no doubt saying, this isn't new. And yes, you are right. 30-15s have been around for a little while. But the reason it's on my radar now is because of the training I was doing recently for the 7 gravel race.
Come in the 7 gravel race, guys.
Where did I come in the 7 gravel? Well, it's kind of you to ask. I flipping won, baby! My training plan from coach Simon Jones included a few days with a very complicated looking interval session. 3 by 13 by 30-15. I had to get him to explain. 3 times, or 4 on some days, 13 reps of 30 seconds really hard with 15 seconds easy in between. I've got to say, even after Simon explained it, I still thought it was a bit weird. Who does 13 reps of anything? We'll get onto that in a moment, but anyway, I tried the session and honestly, it blew me away, which I don't think I can say about any other training session. I've been around for a long time, I've done a lot of training, but it's not often I try something and go, ooh, that was good. So I'm gonna try and actually show you why it's good. I'm gonna take you along on an interval. So wish me luck. 500 watts on for me, and then about 200 watts off. So we'll see how it goes.
Is it recording one way or 360?
I don't know, mate.
I think that's 360.
It looks like 3. Woo, yeah, boy! Let's go! Whap, whap, whap! 3, 2, 1, go. First one kind of always feels hard because your legs are a little bit stiff. But getting towards the end here, the first 30, the 3 to 1 recovery. Okay. 15 seconds goes real quick. It's got to be said. Okay. Well, we're off. And go. Okay. Part of it, you know, is that you're never going so hard for so long, you can't just get to the end of it. Okay, 2, 1. Down, recovery on a steep bit. Last one. I mean, when I say easy, it's not easy, but essentially that was a lot of work. And because the intervals are always so short, after you've accelerated into the 30, you only got to hold it for 15 seconds. Now, to kind of prove a point of how much time you can spend above VO2 max, I'm going to now try and do a conventional 5-minute one at a steady state, just to illustrate. And then I might go for a piece of flapjack. Right then, steady state, 5 minutes. Not entirely sure I'm going to be able to hold actually, but we'll aim for 4:30-ish. See how we go. 30 seconds in, ready for a rest. I think mentally, that's why it's harder, because I know I've just got to keep the gas on now. Good for improving longevity, this interval session. Nothing makes your life seem longer than a 5-minute interval. I'm to use a lot of tricks in my toolbox. 45 seconds. Pretty much same average power, but half the duration, almost. And mentally, I think that feels harder, a lot harder, and yet, technically it should have been easier, right? Now, the bad news is that no matter which session I was going to do, still only halfway through. I'll see you guys later.
While I've got my head down, let's look at some stats. In the 3015s, I averaged 418 watts for 9 minutes 30, did 6 minutes 30 at 450 watts plus, and while it took slightly longer to get to 90% of VO2 max, I was there for over 7 minutes. In the 5-minute effort, I averaged 436, hit 90% quicker, but only 4 minutes was over 90% of VO2 max. So over the course of the workout, either 4x5 or 3x13 by 3015s, that would add up to 16 minutes versus 22 minutes 30 at over 90%, a significant difference. But what effect would that have on your fitness? Well, helpfully, studies have directly compared the two types of intervals over a period of 10 weeks, and the results are really striking. According to Ronestad et al., in good amateur cyclists, power output in a 40-minute time trial increased by 12% in the 30-15 group compared to just 4% in the longer interval group. In a 5-minute test, the 30-15s improved by 8%, the longer interval group didn't improve at all. And then a very similar study, but among elite cyclists, also showed that after just 3 weeks, the 30-15 group improved their power at threshold by 3%, whereas the long interval group saw a 3.5% decrease. And in a 20-minute max test, the 30-15 group not only improved, but were also able to tolerate higher levels of lactate.
Some pretty impressive results there then, and as I said, from a session that I think is more enjoyable to do and easier to complete. But I said earlier, there are a gazillion different interval training sessions you can do. Why is it that this one is seemingly more effective? Why is it better than a 40-20 or a 30-30? Well, who better to hear from than the man who invented the session in the first place, Professor Bent Ronnestad. He's the guy that's done the landmark research on strength training for cyclists, on heat training for cyclists, and has literally written a book on interval training for cyclists, which is incidentally called Interval Training for Cyclists. I asked him where the idea for the session came from, why it's better, and also how you should implement it into your riding. And to be honest with you, I enjoyed chatting to him so much, we're actually going to leave the call pretty much uncut for you guys to watch as well. For those of you who, like me, hearing from super smart people talk about subjects that you find interesting too.
So where did the inspiration for these 13 by 30, 15 sessions come from?
Yeah, so actually now it has accumulated a quite nice story. So it was quite a long time ago since we first started looking into optimizing interval sessions. I think it was around 2010-11 actually, and then we when looking into the literature at that time point, there was not so much on it. And when we're talking about short intervals, there was this. Yeah, one of the first studies in the late 90s by Steptoe and colleagues, which investigated a lot of different intervals. But then typically in this period, and maybe for the next 10 years, the short intervals was typically 30-second maximal effort, and then like a 3 or 4 minutes recovery in between. And I felt that was not like a quite fair comparison with the more traditional 5 to 6 minutes longer intervals. So I was inspired by the 30 seconds that they did a lot of studies on, but I wanted shorter recoveries. And then I actually looked in a study from around 1960 by the famous exercise physiologist Bengt Saltin, who were running on a treadmill up. And when I look at it, it was probably around the maximal aerobic speed. And then he tested out number of different short interval options. So 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off, 10 seconds on, 5 seconds off, etc. But it was only one combination there that had the 2-to-1 ratio between work and recovery. And that was by far the best option in terms of time with high VO2. And also distance covered, because it was standardized to a 20-minute effort altogether. So that indicated that this would give a really good stimuli. And at the same time, in the 90s, if we jump back there, then Veronique Bilat had many studies focusing on time at VO2 max, or time above 90% of VO2 max. And I was also fascinated by that work. So then, to shorten this story, then I wanted to compare in cyclists this 30-15, so the 2-to-1 ratio. That was the reason why we ended up with that. And then we compared this with around 3-minute efforts and 5-minute efforts. And then the recovery was always half of the work duration. And then at this time also it was suggested that the maximal aerobic speed was a good speed for giving a long time at high VO2. So the first project, we used the same power, the maximal aerobic power, in all 3 different intervals. And then they simply continued until failure. And then, of course, the 30-15s have almost twice the time before before failure. And also, that also led to a significantly longer time, above 90% of VO2 max. So that was the first small acute study. And then, of course, you could say, and I totally agree with that, it's not fair to have the same power output if you are doing 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes. So then we went on to check this further. And then our first intervention study, we compared the 30-15s with 5-minute interval in well-trained cyclists, mean VO2 max of 65, 2 sessions per week for 10 weeks. So one group did 4 by 5-minute interval. And then the aim was to have as high power output as possible, high average power output as possible. And then, so this is the reason why it's 13, 30, 15s, because 3 times 13, 30 second efforts with 15-second recovery. So altogether, this makes 19.5 minutes. And that was the closest I was able to get to 20 minutes. So that's how it ended, to these strange numbers. So try to normalize on time, and then the effort in the intervals should be maximal, just to normalize for effort. And then, of course, the consequence of this is that the power in the 30-second work intervals was higher compared to the 5-minute. And in that I guess was the first intervention studies that we showed better training responses to the 30-15s compared to 5-minute intervals.
And what were the improved results? Because it felt like, from reading it, it was quite a broad spectrum of improvements, and not just at VO2 max, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we thought it was a little bit fun to include both a maximal 30-second sprint and a 5-minute maximal effort in the test battery, to see if there was some specificity in the training there. And also we had the longest test was a 40-minute maximal power. And we had the power output at 4 millimoles, so it was a quite large test battery. But in all measurement, it was in advantage of the 30-15s. You might expect that for a 40-minute long effort, the 5 minutes would be better, because then you work continuously for longer time. But then also it in another way can be rationalized that it's actually as expected, that the 30-15s also improved the 40-minute power. So,
and am I right in thinking that when you looked again, but this time at elite cyclists, that the results were similar, not completely the same, but that they were able to tolerate a higher amount of lactate? Was that right?
Yeah, in the follow-up study, yeah, because some of the participants, when I was talking to them, they said they had the impression that they were able to tolerate lactate better. And then we had in this second study, we had a 20-minute performance test, and then we measured lactate at certain time point throughout that test. So then, so we thought we would look a little bit closer into that. And the data indicated at least something in this direction.
So why then do you think that you've seen such impressive results from the micro intervals compared to the longer intervals? What is it about them? Is it simply that you're spending more time at a higher power output in the session, so you're essentially training harder?
Yeah, so in some newer studies, we have also normalized for power. So we have included the power in that series. We have normalized that to same power, but steady. So, and also in that context, this 30-15s gives a longer time, above 90% of VO2 max. So I think that is probably some of the key here. So lately, I think it was in 24, a PhD student of mine, Ingvild Odden, published a really comprehensive work where we had around 2 to 3 HIIT sessions per week for 9 weeks. And we had 22 persons here. So we recorded the oxygen uptake in more than 500 interval sessions. So we had a big data set, and we actually measured the real oxygen uptake in all interval sessions. And then we saw that the persons with the highest percentage of VO2 max across the entire period had the largest improvement in all these typical endurance variables. And that data is quite robust. So it seems like time above 90% of VO2 max or time with high VO2 max, because then you are measuring the actual stress on the body. And it seems like this can be quite important for adaptation. So I would, if I need to suggest something, I would go in that direction.
And so, do you think then, it's because obviously when you're doing a scientific experiment like this, it's very controlled, isn't it? Whereas if you were to write someone a training plan, it would be unlikely to look like this. So do you think that if you were to use these sessions as part of a comprehensive training plan, you would see the same benefits? Or do you think that, you know, if the day before you were doing threshold efforts and the day after you were doing like a long zone 2 ride or whatever, that would kind of moderate the effects?
So in the 2 intervention studies we did, then it was a mix. It was integrated into some threshold and some low intensity. I guess with the first study, the average training volume was 10 hours per week, and then it was maybe around 15 in the second. So the scenario here is in a mixed setting, but the way we described the sessions in the intervention was that it should be maximal effort. And I would not use that in the real world, and I'm not using that in the real world. So my rule of thumb is that in the 30 seconds, you should have approximately the power you are able to hold for 5 minutes. But then you half it after 30 seconds and then on again. So that would be like my general advice and then you of course have to modify based on different individual characteristics.
And do you think there's still a place for the longer intervals as well? Like, you know, maybe even if not physiologically, but mentally, like holding a power output for 5 minutes, because the micro intervals, it's a very easy way of doing a lot of hard work, isn't it? So mentally it's great, but from a training perspective, should you still do the longer ones as well?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. So it's not one or another. I think you should include both for sure. That being said, after we got so many indices that the 30-15s was better than what you can call traditional 5 minute steady pacing, then we started to look into the 5 minutes, if we could modify them a little bit to improve the time with high VO2. And then our first approach was with a fast start. So you go so what we ended up with finding the best alternative is like a 2 minute high power and then reduce it after 2 minutes. So the 3 last minutes of each 5 minutes are then lower. And when we took the average of this 5 minutes and compared it with the same average but steady, then this fast start approach was better.
I'm laughing because that's what I used to do when I was a junior and I didn't have a power meter. I'd be like, right, I need to get my heart rate up, so I'm going to go as fast as I can until I get to 190 beats a minute, and then I'm just going to hold it. So, but actually, that is quite an effective way of doing it.
Yeah. And in addition, it can be specific in some race situation, especially if you are thinking mountain bike, XCO with a fast start, to get a good position before you enter the single trail. So, and it's funny, there is one, probably more, but I know about one specific study early 2000 that compared heart rate based with power based instruction for the training for the intervals. And when you have a heart rate based, you have the fast start because you want to ramp up the heart rate before you slow down. And that study actually showed slightly better training adaptations based on heart rate compared to power. But this is just one example. I know there is also studies not showing the same, but it's just a little bit fun related to what you said. Yeah.
So if we step back a little bit then from looking at individual studies and things, do you think that micro intervals are a kind of like a magic training session that allows you to do more work than you otherwise would be able to? And so is it something that you would recommend people do?
Well, of course, we need to see the big picture. So if you are, for example, specializing in time trials, then for sure I would recommend also to have like long continuous intervals and efforts. I think it's one of the different tools you can have when you're going to make up a training plan. And some people actually, as you kind of hinted to, find this more funny to do with this quick changes in power output, and you are always a new thing coming up, so it's easier for the mind to do it. And of course, one important thing with intervals is that it doesn't matter how efficient they are if you are not doing them. So if you are actually doing some intervals and short intervals, and you find that more fun compared to the traditional, then just go ahead and do it. But it's not like I think it's like something magic and much better than all alternatives. I think it's all about the composition of a well-planned training week and month and year.
Okay. And just going back a step or two to the sort of the specifics. So you were talking earlier about doing double the amount of work to recovery. So a really popular session in cycling has been the 40-20s, hasn't it? So how, it feels like we're talking really kind of like minor differences here, but like, is there a difference between these two kind of micro interval durations? Because that's the same thing, right? Double the amount of work to recovery. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't think there is a big difference. I think they are more or less similar. I don't know if it has been tested or compared, but of course the consequence is you need to reduce the power in the work intervals a little bit, because you have you are increasing the work duration, and then also in theory you could it could take a little bit. I think it's quite similar actually, because of course the VO2 can drop a little bit more when you have 20 seconds or 5 seconds more recovery. But I think this is just details, because you could also think the opposite way, that you are working 10 seconds longer, and then you can speed it up a little bit faster as well. So I think they are quite similar.
Yeah. Okay. And then would you recommend completing one of these like a workout, should we say, with the 30-15s as you have done them in your research? So I think you had 3 sets, didn't you, of 13 reps. So, but you also said that was in part just to get it as close to 20 minutes as possible. So is it a case of, well, actually, why not do like 15 or 10, but then do 4 sets or something? Do you think this is a fairly good session to do?
I think it's a fairly good session, and also we have some numbers backing it, that exactly session. But I don't think it's a big issue if you want to reduce it slightly or increase it slightly.
And did you say you're off to Nove Mesto?
Yeah, so I'm the coach of Martin Vidora. He's more specialized. And then I also have a position in Pinarello Q36.5. So I'm also kind of involved in with Tom Pitcock. Yeah. And then on the most important rider is my son.
Well, yeah, like I say, thanks again, and have a great weekend. My fingers crossed for all your riders, and particularly your son.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, cheers.
All right,
Bye.
See ya. Cycling nerds unite. I enjoyed that one. Hit the thumbs up button if you did too. Massive thanks to Professor Ronestad for his time. Now, I would say, no matter what your cycling objective, whether it's peak performance or general health and fitness, actually doing a little bit of VO2 max work definitely pays dividends. So give this session a try. Be very interested to know how you get on. So get involved in the comment section down below and let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. I've got another interval to do.
Welcome back to the RCA podcast, which is also on YouTube. Today I'm joined by the RCA's head coach, Ryan Thomas, and today we're going to extend a conversation we had recently about a simple way or a simple format or framework you can utilize to increase FTP. And it's all about periodizing through the zones or spending, strategic periods of your training working specific zones. Right? And according to, you said something interesting, Ryan, in that chat, which I've kind of clung on to, which I think is really easy for if somebody's out there listening that they can think about. Understanding the way Training Peaks calculates fitness, they look at a 6-week rolling average, 42 days. Why is that? Because, in a lot of the literature, it doesn't implicitly say, but it suggests that you need roughly around 6 weeks for the body to absorb a stressor that you're putting on it. In this case, you might be targeting a specific zone. And that's the stress. It could be upper end aerobic, it could be a VO2, it could be threshold. So today we're going to dial it right back and talk about if someone wanted to start on this journey, where's the best place to start?
Zone 3 or tempo, usually the first place you would go.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I think most people would see Zone 2. Zone 2 is plastered everywhere, and people are usually doing some sort of Zone 2 and then some sort of high intensity. And I think the thing that most people come to the RCA with is either fatigue or they're plateaued. So they're struggling to get an improvement and they're doing bunch rides and they're doing random intensity, and usually it comes with fatigue. So the negative of doing a lot of high intensity is the neuromuscular fatigue, the nervous system fatigue that just goes on and on and on, and you don't give it a rest. The benefit of Zone 3 or tempo is there's not a whole lot of neuromuscular fatigue. It's mainly you're keeping everything under threshold. You're not getting to a point where you're in that hard or severe domain where you're really having to work hard. It's just working on efficiency, endurance, and muscular endurance. So I don't think it's something that people dedicate time to for a 6-week period, or it doesn't have to be 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, whatever it is. But I think it's really beneficial if you just focus on it for 6 weeks. Most people get to the end of that and they're like, I just feel good. I just feel good at riding in Zone 2, 3, threshold. You just feel steady, comfortable at riding at that. It's a very different sensation to doing VO2 and feeling really good at high power, but it's really beneficial for when you actually get into that type of work.
Okay.
Kind of want to start, we'll have a progression and you'll be able to see this laid out, but 6 weeks.
So when you say you'll be able to see this, we've got a downloadable for people below?
Yes, downloadable PDF, goes through every progression week in for 6 weeks. And you do these once to twice a week. And you can do the same workout. So a lot of the things that we do, we try to keep it interesting, but if you get down to the basics, doing the same workout twice in a week is completely fine. Like you're hitting the same physiology. It actually is probably the best way to do it. So we're starting super simple, tempo, Zone 3, 80 to 85% of your threshold, critical power. And we're doing that for 10 minutes, 3 by 10 minutes with 5 minutes recovery in Zone 1. So that's a pretty easy workout. And most people will go and do that and be like, oh, that didn't really do anything. Like it felt really easy, didn't really get my heart rate high. I was like, I want to go harder. And that you should feel like that. In tempo stuff, you kind of should feel like you want to go harder. But it's really important for these type of work is to stay controlled. Stay in your zone because we're working on efficiency and muscular endurance. You go harder, what starts happening is you start accumulating lactate, your heart rate starts to rise, you start recruiting fast-twitch muscle fibers, and that starts adding the fatigue and it takes away, it's not targeting what you want it to. So you get up around threshold, very glycolytic dependent, you're a lot of glycogen down in tempo, it's kind of mixed fat and carbs. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening there that we're targeting. So as soon as you get above the target, kind of not doing it. So it's really important to teach control, minimize that fatigue week in, week out, and we do it for 6 weeks.
Yeah, okay. And you know, if people are going to adopt something like this where they do target, you know, an upper end aerobic zone, being tempo in this case, they can still do a bunch ride once a week or something where they just go tear it to shreds.
100%.
But the rest of the riding is done in more of that strategic.
Yes.
Obviously a bit of zone 2, but also the tempo that you talk about.
Yes, and to like high intensity interval training, zone 3 is interval training. It's intensity. It's just lower intensity than what a bunch ride would be, or a VO2 session, or a threshold would be. And there's a reason for that. We want to keep it reasonably easy.
Yeah.
But by the end of the 6 weeks, the progression goes through, and we increase time in zone 3. We increase the percentage slightly up to 90%. We decrease recovery during those intervals, and we get all the way up to the last interval session at the 6 week mark is a 40 to 45 minute effort at 85 to 90% threshold.
Okay.
Or you can do 2x20s at 85 to 90%. So up to you, but that's a hard effort. Like you do 45 minutes at 90%, the top end, and by the end of it, you're going to be hurting. But that's the whole point. We start easy and gradually overload, gradually stress the system a little bit more each week, and that starts to give really good benefits.
Okay. So if someone was to do this, first and foremost, what should they experience over the 6 weeks if they're focusing majority of their work on upper end aerobic?
You will decrease your RPE at that level. So we have to keep in mind that the intensity is increasing slightly, the intervals are getting longer. So theoretically, we want to see less drift over that time. So if the first session is more of an introductory session, so it's not super taxing at all. But as the weeks go on, that heart rate at that power level, let's say 85%, we should see that heart rate come down a little bit. So if you're finishing one of those intervals and you're finishing at 160 beats per minute, keep an eye on that. Note where your finishing heart rate is sitting. And then over the weeks, compare, this week I finished my 12-minute effort or my 15-minute effort and it was 155. That's 5 beats less than what I was doing in the first week. So that heart rate drop, the decrease in decoupling, so what's your heart rate doing in the first effort versus the last effort, that should change week in, week out. And you should be theoretically, you should be able to push the higher end of the zones as well in terms of power.
Yeah, that's certainly what I noticed when I used to coach people, is you'd see in these tempo efforts is that, you know, their heart rate would just be drifting or decoupling, as you said, and it would be quite high.
Yes.
And then after sort of 4 or 5 weeks, it stops drifting as much and it comes down. And they're like, oh, this session's feeling really easy. And it's like, well, look, your cardiovascular system's responding.
Yes.
You're adapting to the training. What's one of the negative things people can experience if they did this type of training? And maybe I'll put some words in your mouth here, because I feel like, you know, people do, you know, their goal is to do the local group ride. They want to get from the A to the B group, or the B to the A group, I should say, not the other way around, or, you know, they're racing or something like that. You will over time tend to lose a bit of that upper end stuff by doing this, won't you? So don't expect to get really good sprint power or anaerobic power from this type of training.
As a coach and prescribing this stuff, I wouldn't do it this wouldn't be your only intensity in a 6 week period. You wouldn't usually only do this type of work. So if you're going to implement this, maybe you choose this once a week, or you're doing 3 interval sessions, you do this twice a week, and then you do bunch ride, or you do some sprints, or you do some sort of high intensity stuff to maintain that, because we don't want to lose that. Like, you're going through training, you don't need to be doing only one thing. It's like you're not going to go out and do 6 weeks of zone 2 only, because you're going to lose a lot of your top end.
Get bored.
Yeah, and you get bored. So there's other important factors, but focusing on that natural progression each week, using 1 to 2 workouts a week where you can do it, and then do your other stuff around it.
Like, even if you did say you wanted to over-index on it, because I've certainly done this before, I've gone, you know what, I'm just spending the next 4 to 6 weeks mainly zone 2 and tempo, and I might do 1 bunch ride, and I don't care if my bunch ride is not that great, as long as I can get through it. Mm-hmm. Once I then get to the next round of training, I'm fresh.
Yes.
So when I do get into the intense stuff, I'm like, I'm ready to go. Plus, I've got a really robust aerobic base because I've kind of maybe over-indexed on it, been willing to push aside the high-intensity stuff for a period, but it pays dividends longer term. That's certainly been the case for me.
I think it's a really good point, and I think it's so much more applicable to the everyday amateur athlete than it is a professional athlete,
which is pretty much our audience.
Exactly.
I don't think there's any pros listening, right?
And a lot of people will see what the pros are doing and say, "Oh, I just need to do that." But no. Like far from the truth. It's because they have so much time to recover. You have no time to recover as a full-time dad, worker. You literally can't spend your recovery time is the hour before you go to sleep.
Yep.
So it's like there's no recovery time there. So if you're constantly trying to replicate what the pros are doing, it's not going to work.
Yep.
You need that period of training where you're not stressing your body too much, so that when it comes time to do 4 weeks of VO2 work, you're ready and you can really crush that for 4 weeks, and then you back it off, go again.
If you wanted to go buy the book, not that there's a book about this, but if you wanted to